Given what you've been doing for the past 10 years, I think it's probably.
This is a book that I'm just going to say right. And you guys would appreciate that I'm going to the state fair on Monday. I've never been to the state fair. I get to go. This is going to be so exciting. Why do you laugh at that?
That's just interesting. I've only been, I have, the first state fair I went to was when I moved to South Carolina.
Okay.
I'd never been in my childhood or in my adult life, which I thought was actually pretty interesting. I went to watch all the, the big thing is like the pie contest and the ribbons and all that. It was a pretty interesting thing to be at.
Yeah, I really, I'm just going to say the whole thing. All the way in Perry. I think that we can just go ahead and get started. All right, I think we're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome everyone. This is the final session for the culinary stage here at the Decatur Book Festival. Thank you all for coming out. Yay for 20 years now, milestone occasion. And I guess for me, this will be my last time on this stage. I just retired from the AJC. I've been doing food and dining coverage there for the paper for the last 10 years. And 10 years ago is when the first time I stepped into the Decatur Book Festival sphere. So now I will finish it out this way. And I couldn't be more excited about this panel. This is just to give you an understanding why I love this. I rarely assign myself to write a food feature for the AJC. It just takes too much time, and I was in charge of too many other things. And spending time with books that have recipes, it just takes a lot of energy. And when I read this book, I said to myself, you are going to write the food focal for this one, because it's so wonderful. And as somebody who has become now a proud Georgian, this book made me particularly excited. So let me just tell you a little bit about it. Raise a hand too, by the way. Who has a copy of the book and read this book? Okay, I see like one hand. You got to read this book, and you are in for an absolute treat. And anybody from Georgia should have so much pride by the time you are done even reading the preface. So if I didn't get you excited already, let me tell you, I'm going to introduce it this way. This is how I started my story on their book when I wrote for the story for the AJC. November 18, 1913 was a grand day in the history of Georgia agriculture and gastronomy. It marked the date of the Georgia Product Feasts, when 75 towns and cities across the state staged sumptuous dinners that reflected the food and dishes of their vicinities. Keep in mind, this is all on the same night, right? More than 100 years ago. The Georgia Feast product. The Georgia Products Feast is the starting point for Taste the State, Georgia, Distinctive Foods and Stories from Where Eating Local Began by Kevin Mitchell and David Shields. And that one night only dining affair, they write in the book's preface, posited Georgia as the first state in the United States that made a concerted effort to define its distinctive culinary culture. Yay, go Georgia! Woohoo! And I'm especially happy that that these people who don't even live in Georgia are the ones that told us the story, which is so great. Let's see. So this is their second book in the Taste the State series, published by the University of South Carolina Press. The first was South Carolina's Signature Foods, Recipes, and Stories. Kevin Mitchell is also a chef instructor at the Culinary Institute of Charleston, and David is the author of numerous other books and the chair of the Carolina Gold Rice Foundation. So please welcome David Shields and Kevin Mitchell.
We're glad to be here in Georgia. It's true that neither one of us lives in Georgia, but we have been in Georgia for extraordinary Kevin lived here for a period of time.
Yes, I
And,
did.
and we have crisscrossed the state of Georgia and eaten things that many a Georgian has never put in their mouth. So,
Well, good afternoon. I'm very happy to be here. Yes, I lived here between 2000, I believe, and 2002, where I was a chef at the Sundial Restaurant in the Westin Peachtree Plaza Hotel. I actually moved to Atlanta to become the chef at that particular restaurant, and then I stayed there for about 2 years and then moved on to a lot of other things that I've done in my life, only at the age of 21. So I got a lot of stuff going on. So you just want me to start with the recepe?
Sure. Well, let's set this up. So your book, this is a recipe that you'll find in his book. We have stories and whatnot, but then the recipes specifically, you have a bunch of ones that you were either in your back pocket or that you wanted to, I think you told me, develop just specifically for this project, right?
Yes. So a lot of the recipes in the book are recipes that come from old newspapers, old cookbooks between like the 1700s, 1800s. And then there are about 14 recipes that I wrote specifically. And what we do with that is try to show the evolution of a recipe that may have been written in the 1800s to where it could be or where it has gone to in 2025. So
And
that's where they come from.
I made this recipe at home because we published it in the AJC, and I could not, I had a party that night so that everybody could try these fritters, and they did not last. They were all gone. This is so good, so easy. If I can make it, anybody can make it.
and these are?
These are shrimp and crab fritters. Yes. Shrimp and crab always go well together. But the first thing I'm doing is making a dipping sauce, which this recipe is not in the book, but I can give you the recipe. It's just a basic Cajun kind of remoulade sauce with a little bit of mayonnaise. There's some Creole mustard in here, lemon, celery leaves, green onion, a little bit of Worcestershire, and then these are green onions. And then we're going to do just a couple dashes of Tabasco or whichever hot sauce you like. Actually, I'm a red hot, jerky kind of guy because I'm from the north. But we had this earlier today. We had this really interesting conversation about mayonnaise. So when I'm a Yankee, so I grew up in New Jersey, and at home we ate Hellmann's, and sometimes Miracle Whip, which I don't even deal with that stuff anymore. But when I first moved to Charleston and was ordering mayonnaise for my classroom, every time the mayonnaise would come in, it would be this Duke's. What? Why I order Hellmann's, so I go to my purchasing guy, and he's like, "Chef, you're in the South now, so you need to understand the beauty of Duke's." And I did not understand until we actually wrote about Duke's in the first book, in the history of Duke's and how it all comes about. So mayonnaise, celery leaves, green onion, parsley, whole grain mustard, little lemon juice, horseradish, and Worcestershire sauce. So you can make that ahead of time.
So to finish off the Dukes thing, have you now come around and like you really appreciate it?
Well,
as
at
you
home,
should?
we do have Duke's and Hellmann's in the same house. Just depends on what we're making. So if I want to do a true, that really great, beautiful tomato sandwich, I'm using Duke's. If I'm making something like a potato salad, I'll use Hellmann's, unless we don't have Hellmann's in the house. And now my wife is born and raised in Charleston, so there are times where she, I think, probably does not buy Hellmann's, so we always have Duke's.
there are things to think about in connection with the difference between Duke's and Hellman's. Hellman's adds sugar to the mayonnaise. Duke's does not. The only mayonnaise that's recommended by doctors is Duke's mayonnaise.
Is that true?
That is true.
And it's true because at one point, sugar was something that was rationed off. So it was not a readily available ingredient. So when they were making Dukes, that's how they decided not to use sugar.
Duke's was invented during the First World War, during a period of rationing.
All right. So what I have here is, of course, we have some beautiful shrimp and crab meat. You can use lump, jumbo lump, claw, whichever one you like. Nowadays, we use the one that is a little bit more economically sound, right? Because jumbo lump can run you $35, $40, $45 a pound. So lump is fine, claw is fine. I also have some minced onion.
One of the things we talk about is the history of the crab industry in Georgia, where overfishing did in the industry early in the 21st century. And there's also a period when the crab processing plants, the picking plants in the 1980s economically failed. So it's only in the last 4 years that the population of blue crabs in Georgia has rebounded to the point where it equals the numbers back in the 1990s when commercial harvesting could take place. So my anticipation is that within the next year or two, Georgians will be able to have Georgian crab meat at their disposal from their own waters. Now, if you had a home out on the Sea Islands and had some chicken necks and a crab net, you could have had Georgia crabs anytime during that period. But I'm talking about in your local grocery store and seafood mart.
Oh, that's exciting news. We're excited to see what's already happening with the oysters here on the coast. So crab necks, huh?
There was a famous oyster variety known throughout the United States, the Thunderbolt oyster that came from the creeks next to Savannah, that again was done in by over harvesting and the pollution from yard chemicals. But the pristine waters of the coastal islands is such that oysters and clams from places like Sapelo are wonderful. And you can go and get, they tend to be in the shape of blades. You can get Georgia blades and have as fine an oyster experience here as you can on the eastern shore of Virginia by the Chesapeake Bay.
Okay, Kevin, tell us where you're at now.
So what I've done is I have the shrimp and the crab, and then I've added the dry ingredients. So there's flour, salt, baking powder, cayenne pepper, and smoked paprika. We add those together. We fold in that mixture in with the shrimp and the crab. And then my wet ingredients is basically just 1 egg, a little bit of water, and some chopped parsley. And I don't add a lot of flour or a lot of moisture to it because the natural protein in the shrimp brings the fritters together. Now you can, if you want, you can add a little bit more moisture if you like them a little bit wetter or drier. It's totally up to you. But you want to make sure you incorporate that really, really well. And you can also use gluten-free flour, which works really well in this recipe too.
Kevin, what kind of oil have you got there?
This is grapeseed oil, right? But you can use pretty much any oil that you want. Tabletop fryer, or if you don't have a tabletop fryer, Dutch oven, oil. Get your oil heated up to about 350 degrees.
Now, what do you look for in a frying oil?
I like to use a lot of neutral oils that don't have a lot of flavor to it, so it doesn't overpower the flavor of what you're actually cooking. Grapeseed oil is a really great oil because it's really mild, it's neutral, it really does not have much flavor in it, but vegetable oil works really well. You can use olive oil. I would not recommend using extra virgin olive oil because the smoke point is really different and it burns really easily. Plus, you don't want to waste the beautiful flavor of extra virgin olive oil by frying with it. Now, some people do. Some people saute with it. That's great, but to deep fry, I would not do that. Now, we also talk about other oils in the book that we use to cook with. And outside, there was a setup from Oliver Farms. They make oils from specific seeds, so sunflower seed, pumpkin seed. Oh, thank you. This one is our favorite. This is oil made from okra seeds. It has a beautiful flavor like okra. It's not slimy.
No, it's slippery.
It's slippery, not slimy. But the beauty of this is that clay produces this oil from those okra seeds. It can tend to be a little expensive because you don't yield as much oil from okra seeds as you would a different type of seed.
10% for a pound of okra seed.
So when we were visiting with him, filming for our show, we can talk about that later, put 50 pounds of okra seeds through his mill, and you only get about 5 gallons of oil. So it is very expensive. For him, it's a labor of love. This here, especially in the summer, you get those beautiful ripe tomatoes, slice them, a little bit of salt, some cracked black pepper. Instead of olive oil, use okra seed oil. Pour that right over your tomatoes. You'll never go back.
Friends, I bought this bottle of okra seed oil, so after our talk, you can come and have a taste of it. And those of you who are in Team Okra, I think you'll have a revelation on your tongue. Those of you who are not, well, maybe someone will be converted. You know, someone who's been curious but not quite there yet. The sumptuous, vernal, spring-like, green plushness of okra will burst on your tongue, and the radiance will take place in your brain.
The two of you, we know that you go back now a little bit. Talk to us about how you embarked on, you had your first book, now you have the Georgia book, and then you also have your travel show coming up. Tell us how the two of you became a team.
I would say late 2013, 2014, David came to Charleston as a part of the Carolina Gold Rice Foundation, and they held a rice symposium. And as an instructor at the school, we actually hosted that conference at our downtown campus. And I was asked to create a meal that we can feed to the participants. And this particular dish was called chicken bog. And I'm a Yankee, I'm from the North, I had no clue what chicken bog is or was, and was actually given a recipe from Anson Mills on how to make chicken bog. And as I'm reading through and looking at this recipe, I realized that this is something very familiar to of what my grandmother would make for me growing up at home. It's chicken and rice, right, with some onions, celery, and carrot. So we met there, and then shortly after, David was back in town for the American Culinary Federation conference, and through a mutual friend, he mentioned my friend, Chef Matthew Rayford, who's a chef here in Georgia as well, says that he knows this gentleman, his name is David Shields, and he wants to recreate a dinner that was held in Charleston over 150 years ago by a formerly enslaved person who goes on to become the greatest black caterer in the city of Charleston. I want you to meet David. So we talked, but I had already met David, but then we were talking about this gentleman. His name was Nat Fuller. And David says to me, what a cool thing we could do is we can recreate that dinner he hosted in Charleston as a way to celebrate the end of the Civil War. Initially, I didn't think it was going to happen because, you meet with people, you have conversations, and life happens. And you go your way, they go their way, you never see them again or whatever. I was wrong, because 2 weeks later, my email was inundated by anything and everything I could possibly ever want to know about Nat Fuller. And so I realized that David was very serious. So we decided that we were going to go and recreate this dinner, and we talked to many famous people, luminaries in Charleston. Natalie Dupree was a part of it, Chef Sean Brock, who was still in Charleston at that time. And so we did the research, and about a year to the day, we hosted and recreated that dinner. Because at the point, David initially asked me to stand in the shoes of Nat Fuller. And initially I was like, there's no way. How can I do or recreate something that was so powerful 150 years prior and still do justice with it? But we hosted that dinner April 19th, 2015. And then from that point, David and I have been pretty much tied to the hip. From there, we hosted a field pea tasting in Charleston.
Right. The New York Times wanted to do a special for, New Year's Eve, Hoppin' John, Southern dish, good luck. What is the best field pea? Because we know those black-eyed peas, despite the fact that a lot of people use them, are actually cow food and not the best tasting field pea out there.
I disagree with that.
So we decided to get every old variety of field pea that was grown in the South. And about 15, these are all Vigna inguiculata. They came from West Africa originally. Sea Island red peas, rice peas, whippoorwill peas, conch
Crowders,
peas,
whatever.
brown crowders, black crowders. We had them all, and he made them all. And he and B.J. Dennis and Kim Severson and the dean of the Tuskegee Institute was there, and we sat down and ate field peas for half an afternoon.
Yes, and then from there,
Oh, by the way, which was the winner? What's ideal for Hoppin' John?
It was what was the little finger lady pea, I think it was. It was a white pea. But let me tell you right here, Georgia has the greatest of all field peas, I think, and it's the red Sea Island red pea that survived on Sapelo. It was maintained by Cornelia Bailey, the matriarch of Sapelo Island. It's available from numbers of people in Atlanta. Linton Hopkins is a great champion of this pea, so if you go to Linton Hopkins restaurants, you will have that as a side. So Sea Island red pea, buy them off the internet, numbers of purveyors. Deep flavor. And creamy texture.
So from there, that dinner opened up this chasm for me to really try to understand and research the history of those cooks. And so in 2016, I decided to leave Charleston and pack up my life and move to Oxford, Mississippi, and get my graduate degree at the University of Mississippi in Southern Studies. And it's there I focus mainly in on Southern food culture, the revitalization of Southern ingredients, and then for me, my own personal passion, understanding the history of African Americans in cooking and why that history is so important. So during this time, between 2016, 2018, David and I kept in contact. I used him as a resource for writing many a paper at the university, and specifically my master's thesis. And so in 2018, I come back, and not too long after that, David calls me and says, "Hey, do you want to write a book?" Yeah, sure, I want to write a book. So we decided that we were going to write this book through the University of South Carolina Press. And initially, the book idea came to David through the press, and they wanted him to write a book that was basically, what are your top 10 hits of Southern food? And David wanted to do something a little bit more comprehensive, so he initially turned down that idea, and they kept coming back to him. And so he said, okay, fine, this is what we're going to do. I want to do this, but I want to write this book with a chef, and I want to write this book with Kevin, because we've done other projects together. So
I'm going to pause you really quick here. If this is your car, you're blocking some folks. Do you have a Kansas license plate RO22587? If that is you. We're not in Kansas anymore. You can't do this. So,
Well,
okay.
sinner friend, where are you?
Okay. All right. There you go. Yeah. Okay, resume. Thank you.
So we got together and we turned in. David kind of introduced me to the concept and how he saw it should be written, and we turned in some writing samples, and then next thing you know, we were given a contract to write Taste the State, South Carolina.
But we wrote too much.
Yes,
a
lot.
We took every idea that had ever been associated with South Carolina food, but it taught us things. I mean, and you can think about this in connection with Georgia food. There are certain things that you eat and you think, well, this is Georgia food. Fried chicken, how many people think that's Georgia food? Yeah, a fair number. Pecan pie, a lot of people think that's Georgia food too. Fried chicken, don't tell a Virginian that it's from Georgia. Pecan pie, don't tell anyone from Texas that Georgia has a particular claim to pecan pie because it was invented in Texas and they know the date. They've got the names, they've got the receipts. So one of the things we did was we decided that, on the most part, we would eliminate things which are generically Southern and lean into those things which are peculiar to Georgia. Things like a dish that once was the most popular banquet dish in the state, but hasn't been served in a banquet, I'm sure, in half a century. That is possum and taters. There was a moment, possum and taters was everywhere. Then the automobile came and a lot of squished possums appeared by the side of the road, and all of a sudden, from being a game meat, it became roadkill. And you can see the last local cookbook to have it is Noonan's. Noonan's had a 1956 Junior League spiral-bound cookbook. They had possum and taters there. didn't appear in a cookbook until White Trash Cooking came out in the 1970s. And that was sort of like the kiss of death. I've had possum and taters. It tastes good.
I have not, and I have not been convinced.
How are you going to be convinced when you only have an idea of what it is?
Chef Kevin, can you tell us a couple visual cues? How did you? I saw that you were, removing some of them. What's your cues that this is done?
I mean, the one thing is, yes, chefs use GBD, golden brown and delicious. Specifically, when you're frying something and you drop it in oil, the great way to tell it's ready is when it actually starts to float to the top, right? So think of like if you make gnocchi at home or pasta, when it rises to the top, that's when you know it's done. You want to make sure you're also using, your oil's got to be at the right temperature. If it's too low, by the time your fritters or whatever it is that you're cooking in oil gets cooked, it becomes oversaturated with the oil because the oil is not at the right temperature to cook, right? So these ones here also, because there's baking powder in it, once they start to puff a little bit and they expand and they're floating, that's when you know that they're done. And then also a good thing to do is when things come right out of the fryer, drain them on paper towel and instantly season them with a little bit of salt and pepper while they're still hot, because the heat will actually allow for the salt to melt into whatever it is that you're frying. So, go ahead.
I'm awaiting the moment when I can do the taste test on this. One of the things we do in this book is introduce Georgians to a number of ingredients and foods that are peculiar to a particular region in Georgia, but may be generally unknown in other parts, and certain things that had a kind of historical importance that seem to have disappeared. How many people have had Ogeechee limes? How many people have had Tupelo honey? The blossoms that are sipped for their nectar by bees actually form these fruits about the size of an olive, and they have the tang of a citrus fruit. And they were made into a pickle called Ogeechee lime pickles. And you'll see them in recipe books like Colquitt's Savannah Cookbook of 1934, a very famous Georgia cookbook. And Ogeechee limes were sold at this time, this very week, in produce stands all across Georgia, in the south part of Georgia where the Tupelo, black Tupelo, the Nyssa Ogeechee tree is. So, next time you're at your Tupelo honey supplier, ask them, do you have a source for the little fruits of that tree so I can try them as a hors d'oeuvre? Chef here hasn't tasted them.
No.
And it's number one on his want to get list, you know.
Yeah, I want to play around with them. I know you can make jam out of them, but I also say you can use, I'm a huge fan of key lime pie. So looking to use the juice to actually make a version of key lime pie would be really great for me, because I have a sweet tooth. So if it's sweet, I'm going to eat it. People ask me, what's your favorite dessert? Does it have sugar in it? Yes, that's my favorite dessert.
Actually, I cooked your bourbon and Coke cake.
Oh, the cherry Coke and bourbon cake.
It is so good. It is so good that you want to make that.
That is the one. Yes, it's very. I mean, it's Coca-Cola cake, but I use cherry Coke instead. And then whenever I have bourbon, usually a mixer is usually Coke or ginger ale. So I said, well, you know what? Let's use this cherry Coke and then throw some bourbon in there. Also throw some ginger beer in there and see what happens. And it's It's sweet, it's delicious, it's everything I want a dessert to be.
Georgia was very important in the history of sugar production in the United States. The first cold-tolerant sugar variety, the purple ribbon sugar cane, came into Georgia around 1810. And it was the first time that sugar could be manufactured on mainland United States cheaply. Actually, Louisianans grabbed hold of the sugar variety and they produced much more. The Georgians were all interested in cane syrup, and that's a fixation that remained historically, while the people in Louisiana went for sugar. In 1825, sugar became so cheap in the United States that anyone could buy it. And that means, among other things, that you don't have to worry about your fruit crop perishing on the produce stand table, because you could preserve your entire fruit crop. The great age of American jams and jellies and fruit wines all date from 1826, when Georgia and Louisiana sugar got so cheap that everyone could use it.
Do you mind telling, since we're talking about fruit, do you mind telling us about the rise and fall of Georgia as the premier peach state? I find the story fascinating.
Well, hey, first, who thinks Georgia grows the most amount of peaches in the country? Oh.
No, it's California,
It's
number
actually
one.
California.
South Carolina, number two. But South Carolina actually snagged the peach industry from Georgia, because what happened was so much money was being made from Alberta peaches and the Georgia Belle, which is the famous white peach, that everyone decides, I want to start growing peaches. And what do? They get heavily into debt and they overproduce. And the price of peaches go down and they can't pay for their land, and entire counties go bankrupt. They're sort of like a peach crash, and they lose the farm. All of these trees are there going derelict. So who swoops in? Well, we'll take cuttings from your peach trees, and we will control the supply from now on, says the South Carolina producers. But I'm not going to say that Georgia is not the peach state, because I think the greatest peach breeder of the modern world, a guy named Dick Oakey from Byron, Georgia, he produced all of the Prince variety of peaches in the last 40 or 50 years. The only rival he has in the United States for creating the next new great taste of peach is a guy on the West Coast named Floyd Zager, who only specializes in white peaches. And his interest is in the Asian market, because Asians don't like the acid dimension of peaches. They just want the pure sugar peach, and that's what white peaches will do. So, interesting sort of glimpses of the world of peaches. Georgia, not the great peach producer it once was, still produces wonderful ones, and it breeds the best ones. So you can call yourself the peach state. And you should erect a statue to Dick Oakey sometime in the near future before he leaves us all.
Are there any other really revelatory pieces of information that I know you all unearthed so much in the course of your research, but is there like one thing that really stands out of like, I can't believe this bit of information?
I'll say, well, David has a fascination for a recipe called mull or mulls. There are several recipes in the book, shrimp mull, chicken mull. It's like a stew. It's got milk in it, and I have not tasted it. He loves it.
You know, Georgians have been pretending that they have a characteristic stew of themselves, Brunswick stew, but Brunswick stew was invented in Virginia a good half century before it popped up in Georgia. Indeed, the first time it's mentioned in Georgia in print, it's called Virginia Brunswick stew. That's in the 1870s. But it does have a unique and quite wonderful stew, these mulls. And around Athens, it's chicken mull. Out on the coast, it's shrimp mull. And there's a world of hunters out there that make mull out of ducks, snakes, turtles, what have you. And those are sort of like campfire dishes, like chicken bog used to be, and pine bark stew used to be. And I think chicken mull is one of the tastiest little dishes you can have. And it's strangely enough, it was the Georgia football team that really popularized it. If you go to Athens now, there are numbers of restaurants that will serve it. If you haven't had it, a pilgrimage is in order.
I think at that point we can open it up in the next few minutes for some questions here.
Okay, I did have this question. Do you guys know if sweet potato pie is from Georgia or not?
Sweet potato. Sweet potato, more North Carolina?
No, South Carolina is, South Carolina and North Carolina, secondary to Georgia.
Yes.
The great center of breeding for sweet potatoes in the United States was Brunswick, Georgia, and the Georgia pumpkin yam and the lost Georgia sugar yam, which was considered the best tasting sweet potato that ever existed. But if you want to make sweet potatoes now, you want to use the Puerto Rico sweet potato or the Georgia pumpkin yam, which is one of those orange sweet potatoes, the type that weep sugar when you bake them in the oven.
But not for frying.
They're not for frying.
Sweet potato fries, no.
No, they're for sweet potato pie.
Sweet potato pie, yes.
Yeah.
Another one?
Interestingly enough, there was a sweet potato called the Nansemond on the eastern shore of Virginia that is a dry sweet potato. And the Northerners loved it because they boiled their sweet potatoes. They, potato, we'll treat it like the Irish potato, we'll boil it, And in the South, of course, you roast sweet potatoes and candy them. And so this dry, boiling sweet potato, which they renamed the Jersey, has been despised by Southerners for a century and a half. But
I'm from New Jersey,
so this is the story that redeems his state here. When people began experimenting in Georgia with sweet potato fries, they tried all the classic orange yams, and you got limp fries. They tried the old Nansemond despised northern sweet potato, the Jersey, and boy, they crisped up real good. So the stone that the builders rejected got...
You mentioned that mull stew. What is that?
The
what
what?
is mull?
Mull.
Mull? It is a milk-based stew, but it's not like a chowder in that it doesn't have chopped onions and potatoes and bacon in it. What's interesting about it is they put vinegar in that milk to give it an edge. And it's cooked long and at low temperatures, and it really serves as a way to absorb a lot of it. The one thing that they do in the preparations of mole that is similar to chowder is they like to crunch up crackers and stick it in as a kind of ballast. I've always tried to understand the theory of oyster crackers, but same idea came south.
I think we have time for one more question if there is.
So I'm looking at recipes within your book, and some of them have very large quantities. But I also wonder, they are historical recipes. Is there anything that you might suggest in terms of, to ensure modern success with a recipe that might be from the 40s or 50s or something like that?
One of the things we decided was that we're going to present sort of the historical record of Georgia food without mediating it. That is, we will not substitute ingredients that are available now that aren't, or alter the narrative, or alter and you're quite right. Numbers of those dishes were intended for like outdoor events. Like your barbecue sauce recipe has a certain amplitude to it. But I would say, use it as a grounds for a personal experiment. I mean, if you want a modern Georgia cookbook, there are plenty of those out there.
We got mole in it?
Well, yeah, one or two do. I mean, the ones by Athens chefs, I would go looking for.
Yeah, there's, outside of the historical, the recipes that I write specifically are in smaller quantities, and that's due to my editor saying, hey, you can only have this, it's got to be 6, no more than 10 people. So a lot of the more contemporary recipes that I have written are going to put you into that 6 to 8, 6 to 10, depending on what it is. There's a rutabaga soup in there that's going to put you a little bit over 10, but it's a soup, right? There's, this recipe, if you're using this, I just use an ice cream scoop. If you're using like a 1 ounce scoop, you're going to get 30 or more, depending. This is a little bit bigger than an ounce, so you're going to get less fritters. So as David said, for me, recipes are like, they're guidelines. They're not like the end all be all, because you need to have some room to kind of maneuver through. And I use my recipes to kind of show you like where it was in the 1800s and where it is today for a contemporary chef, or for today if you want to go home and make, there's a recipe for mustard greens and potatoes, and that recipe is really close to me because it's something that I learned to cook from my grandmother, and that's, so I tried to make ties with the old recipes and with some of the new ones, but still bring it into where you can understand that it's still Georgia. Some of the recipes I write I'm not from Georgia specifically, but they appeal to me here and that love of cooking with my grandmother.
A word about Georgia greens. The curly type of mustard that you find, the fancy ostrich plume mustard, created in Augusta. Collards, the first seed ever offered for collards was the Georgia blue stem collard, and it still remains sort of one of the standard ones. I like the yellow and white cabbage collards. Georgia created the white cabbage collard. That's a more refined collard than the other one. So, and Chef and I are engaged in creating a TV show now called Savors of Flavor. We were down in Milledgeville recently to see Comfort Farms and John Jackson, and he is growing a type of okra which in West Africa was eaten for its leaves, not its pods. And chef created a dish, cooking greens, not using pork, but
And the beauty of these greens, I mean, they can grow to be this big. And they do have the distinctive flavor of okra. Depending on how long you cook them or not cook them, there still is a little bit of slime.
no, there isn't.
Well, okra is very special to me because in the South Carolina book, I wrote about okra, and I wrote it was the vegetable that people love to hate or hate to love, especially if you're from the north. I'm from the north, but my grandmother is from the south, so she cooked okra for me all the time. But I come across other northerners from time to time, and they absolutely hate okra because of the texture. But the texture of that vegetable is very important. It's healthy, and it also does other things. It's a thickener. You know, you can do a lot of really great things with okra. And so with these leaves, and for me being able to taste them and see them for the first time, and I made a coleslaw out of them with the leaves raw with cabbage. I didn't do a mayonnaise kind of base dressing with it. It was more vinaigrette, so apple cider vinegar, oil. I actually used okra seed oil in it as well. And then you can cook those greens like you would cook collards. Now you don't have to cook them as long as collards. They're a lot more tender. They're thinner. And I did not use smoked pork product because in West Africa, the farmer John, his mother did not use that. She used smoked fish. So we use smoked catfish to give you that smoky, porky flavor to the greens. And the greens, once again, very tender, nice okra flavor to them, but was something that was really fascinating to me because I had, up until us going there and learning about them, I had never even heard that you can have those particular greens raw or cooked like collards or mustards or things like that.
You can see Chef prepare these things and me eat them in
Yes.
this show after it premieres in May of 2026. It's called The Savors of Flavor. It'll be nationally distributed as an ETV production.
That's a perfect way to end it. Congratulations on all that. I'm looking forward to it. Thank you. I could listen to them tell their stories of food all day, and I hope that all of us feel a bit more proud to live in Georgia, this great state for food. The two of them will be over there signing books, and since this is our last session, just a big round of applause. There's a lot of people who put this festival together. Thank you to our AV team. Thank you to our culinary team. You guys stand here. They spent, three of them did all of the prep work for everybody's dishes that they demoed. So thank you very much. Thank you to all of our volunteers here, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll see you at next year's festival.
That was good. You should have a fritter.
Okay, I will. I think that I'm going to have my own little Georgia grown dinner on November, what's their date? 13th? What's our anniversary date for the...
Isn't it 18th?
I have it on
19th, I
I
think.
really think I need to have a Georgia grown dinner.
Stick it over.